Joining me in the presentation is Dr. Catherine Welsman, also a longstanding member of the board. Available to answer any technical questions at the conclusion of the briefing will be Mr. Sean Baker, our Executive Director, and Mrs. Jane Nelson, the Manager of Animal Welfare at LAPS. Firstly, I would like to express the profound thanks of all members of the board, our staff, volunteers, and supporters for the opportunity of making this presentation. It was the encouragement of the Township Council that led to the founding of LAPS. The working relationship between the township and LAPS can best be summed up as effective township support, cooperation, leadership, and continuing dedication to the community in the maintenance of companion animal welfare. We are delighted to have been given the opportunity of serving our community for you, and doing so in such a harmonious relationship. The facility was constructed with a view to fulfilling our animal control responsibilities, as well as providing welfare for lost, stray, or surrendered companion animals. It was also designed to be a place where dog and cat volunteers could comfortably be part of the operation. LAPS has been a contracted provider of animal control services for the township since 2003. Gonzo's story on this side is a good example of what animal control often entails. Our responsibilities include bylaw complaints and enforcement, dog licensing, and having animal controls on shift 7 days a week and on call 24 hours a day for emergencies. We have responded to approximately 1,600 calls for service every year. Our contract also includes basic sheltering operations and lists caring for abandoned companion animals as part of our animal control responsibilities. We are also required to create opportunities for volunteers. I'd now like to introduce Dr. Welsman, who will present the findings of a 2-year review of cat overpopulation and how it is increasingly affecting animal control and sheltering operations at the township's animal shelter. Dr. Welsman.
Thank you, Daryl. As your animal control provider and shelter operator, we're here tonight to bring your attention to the problem of cat overpopulation and how it's increasingly affecting animal control and sheltering operations at the township's animal shelter. The BC SPCA declared a province-wide cat overpopulation crisis in 2014. It's estimated that Langley has about 33,000 owned cats and 22,000 unowned, feral, and abandoned cats. Most of the unowned cats aren't spayed or neutered, and about 20% of the owned cats aren't either. This means almost 29,000 cats are reproducing within our community. This many cats can produce more than 80,000 kittens in a year, and a kitten can become pregnant as early as 4 to 5 months of age. You can see how quickly the problem will grow if it's not addressed. The growing cat population has resulted in a growing number of cats and kittens being treated inhumanely or left at LAPS. Many of them are sick and contagious when they're brought in. Staff work incredibly hard and have done an outstanding job accommodating the increasing number of sick cats within the constraints of the existing shelter, but it was never designed to support the number of sick cats that we're now being asked to support. We have space for about 30 cats at the shelter, but when those spaces are full, we have no choice but to use the dog assessment and training areas, the dog grooming room, staff and animal control offices as overflow housing for the sick and injured cats. This puts a significant strain on our animal control and dog operations, and when contagious cats are housed in our dog grooming room, for example, we can't use that to bathe dogs. And having the contagious cats in the main shelter puts the dogs at risk of catching things like ringworm. Another result of the cat overpopulation is the public health risk, both to the greater community and within the shelter. When animals are brought to the shelter, their first point of contact is the reception counter, which is shown in this slide. During kitten season, it's not unusual for multiple litters of kittens to be dropped off at the same time. It's unavoidable that contagious cats and kittens end up contaminating these public areas while they wait for intake exams. So there's no contained space in the shelter for them to wait. If they're found to be contagious, staff members have to drop everything, do a thorough decontamination of the main entrance and waiting area, the reception desk, the main hallway, and the dog training room. Since the township shelter wasn't built with cat-specific isolation in mind, the facilities we use for intake and isolating these cats, it does fail sometimes. Several years ago, we had a ringworm outbreak due to a litter of kittens being brought into the shelter. Many staff members got ringworm, as did many of the rest of the shelter animals, and unfortunately, some of our volunteers that came into contact with these sick animals took the ringworm home to their families and pets. The shelter had to be shut down for intake, and a reduced number of adoptions took place during the outbreak. This is something we don't want to see happen again. As for the greater community, feral cats do have a potential for transmitting ringworm, toxoplasmosis, which affects pregnant women, roundworm, and although unlikely, rabies. Fortunately, the township is in a better position than most other municipalities to address these problems. You have a first-class facility as well as a first-class animal control operation, which is supported by a first-class group of dedicated volunteers for both dogs and cats, and we're here tonight because we want to help. We have consulted with an infection control expert at the Ontario Veterinary College, as well as with the shelter medicine veterinarians at UC Davis, who are the recognized experts in shelter medicine and facility design. Based on LAP's operating experience and extensive research and consultation process, the solution is very clear. We need to be able to separate the cat intake process and the sick housing from the rest of the shelter, and we need to increase our capacity to care for more cats. The solution we propose is the ISO Oasis, a specifically designed and purpose-built facility that will be adjacent to the existing building as shown. This diagram represents the current township site. The location will comply with the setbacks and maximize our operational efficiency. The isolation ward itself will be self-contained with an intake area, isolation rooms for cats and litters of kittens, long and short-term housing solutions for sick cats, a black light room to help diagnose ringworm, an area for volunteers to safely drop off feral cats after hours, as well as a multi-purpose room that can be adjusted to specific needs, including a trap, neuter, return, or adopt program, and community spay and neuter events. It will increase the shelter's capacity for cats by about 50%. It will also reduce the treatment time and costs by housing sick cats according to the best practices defined by our experts. The reduced treatment times means we'll have faster adoptions. And because the facility is specifically designed to contain infectious diseases, staff will spend significantly less time doing decontamination tasks. The risk to the public, staff and volunteers, as well as to healthy dogs and cats will be eliminated by preventing sick cats and kittens from ever entering the main shelter. We'll also be able to use our dog grooming room, training rooms, and staff areas as they were intended to be used, which will relieve strain on virtually every aspect of our animal control and basic sheltering operations. With the additional capacity and features provided by the ISO Oasis, LAPS will be able to have a bigger presence and therefore create more opportunities for public education. New volunteer opportunities will be created to support educational initiatives and spay-neuter projects. This means more cats will be spayed and neutered, and more cats will ultimately be adopted. Because of the new facility's increased capacity, housing for feral cats, and ability to set up on-site spay and neuter clinics, LAPS will be eligible for new sources of grant funding that we are currently not eligible for. We already have a very large global presence and social influence, and this project is just going to showcase the Township of Langley as leaders in animal welfare. Together, we'll be creating a model that other communities will want to duplicate. I'll let Daryl finish up.
Thank you, Catherine. We realize the township has many priorities in the efficient and accountable use of taxpayers' dollars in the operation and maintenance of your sponsored facilities. It is our belief that this is a necessary project to maintain efficient, safe, and healthy operations in your shelter. We recognize the cost is not insignificant at an estimate of $500,000, and that it would be some years before it would ordinarily be able to receive consideration in your capital plan. The board of directors, the members, volunteers, and our community supporters are committed to what we feel is the right and timely solution to the growing problem in the township. We would like to propose a partnership with you to make this happen this year. We've reached this conclusion following this lengthy and comprehensive review, as Catherine just presented. It's our highest priority project. We are coming to you with a commitment to contribute 60% of the costs and ask for your support of 40%, but not to exceed $225,000. The ISO Oasis resides on township property, and therefore the asset would be 100% owned by the township. Our financial commitment includes cash in hand, as well as 2 substantial donor pledges that have been made contingent upon the township's contribution of the funds requested and approval within the 2015 year capital plan. This concludes the presentation, Your Worship and members of council. Is there any questions?
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation, and there is a question from Councillor Fox.
Thank you very much. Foxes like cats, but usually for the wrong reason. Could we go back a couple of slides, please, Mr. Baker? One more? Right here. Okay, so it was indicated in the presentation that this opportunity to create this Oasis will open up opportunities for funding grants which are not presently available. So maybe could you just explain a little bit about this particular page and how this relates to the capital costs and the operating costs associated with this particular project?
Thank you, Councillor Fox. This page would not actually speak to capital or operating costs. It would speak to the ability to increase programming in the future. So these are not capital grants. These are program-specific grants that are available by these organizations.
So with the Cat Oasis in place, you increase your programming opportunities, and then these would then dovetail with the new building to operate the programs. Now, in terms of when you talk about programs, are you talking about a variety of programs for school-age children, for volunteers, for whatever other elements that are associated with cat? I know you get dog walkers, but do you have cat walkers and things like that?
There are some funny videos about cat walking, but perhaps for a different presentation. It has always been a part of our mandate to look at educational opportunities wherever we can find them. Several slides before this one, you may have seen about 30 or 40 school-age children that were at our facility. That is a common practice with a number of the schools, not only within Langley, but outside of Langley that come to our unique facility. So to answer your question, yes, absolutely. Obviously, these funds these are just 2 examples,
right,
but these examples would go towards basic spay-neuter initiatives, but that lends itself to a number of great educational opportunities certainly for kids.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Sean, I was up and had a visit, and thank you very much. One question, you had said there's about 370 cats in 2014 that you brought in. And out of those cats, do you have a way to tell how many are residents of the Township of Langley?
No, to be honest, no. But certainly, based on location where they were found within the township, certainly at that time. We do, because although we like all cats, we do have, certainly our mandate is to look after Langley's cats. And in very rare circumstances will we accept cats from outside of our jurisdiction. We just simply generally don't have the space or resources to accommodate those.
If you know there. The other question is, like you had also pointed out that the adoption rate had doubled since last year, still low, but do you spray and neuter them before you adopt them, or I guess just a question?
Yeah. Just to clarify the point about adoption rate, it was actually our return to owner rate had doubled, is what we were talking about. It had gone from 3% on average to 6% last year, which is a victory, a small one, be that it may. Every animal is spay or neutered. Even every kitten is spay or neutered before it leaves our facility. They are done as soon as they're heavy enough to be spayed or neutered, and sometimes that can be as young as 10 weeks of age. So certainly part of the solution is certainly spay and neuter.
Thank you.
Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, thank you. I'm interested in knowing, very informative, by the way, the presentation. I'm interested in knowing, with 80,000 cats being born each year, most of those to non-owned cats, what is the capacity of this facility, and sort of what is the length of time in which it might be sort of reaching capacity? It seems like it could happen very quickly.
Thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh. Yes, absolutely. I've always joked that you could build sort of a BC Place style shelter and still not be able to accommodate all the cats, and that's just simply a reality. But it would enable us to certainly take some big steps into helping reduce the need for it when we're looking down the road, sort of 10, 15 years, once you start to look at the effects of active spay and neuter programs. So it's a good question. Is the facility big enough, is perhaps what you're asking. It is certainly, it's as big as we can, I think, reasonably build it, based on financial constraints, as well as the ability to have space on our property, as well as just our ability to provide programming as well. So yes, it's we've certainly thought it through, and we're maximizing the size of it.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Qualley.
Hi, I have two questions for you. First, thanks for the presentation. It's always nice to hear from labs. Can you go back a couple of slides that had the floor plan for the new building? Within that, is there some opportunity for you to do your own spay and neuter on site? Is that part of this plan?
It is, absolutely, and that's a big part of the idea, to be able to work into some funding with both PetSmart and BCSPCA. If you look, there are two areas specifically. One is actually the intake room, which is up at the top component, and there are two exam tables there. That room is actually set up to be able to do basic spay and neuter surgeries. This would not be something that we would be doing on an ongoing basis. This would be something that we'd be offering on a once or twice a year initiative, sort of as a spay and neuter day. We would rely on bringing in the appropriate equipment, and of course having veterinarians on site to do that. It's certainly not our goal to be having a day-to-day veterinary clinic there.
Okay, thanks. So you currently give spay and neuter certificates. So on a day like the Roundup Day, which I was happy to volunteer for, you brought in a bunch of cats that didn't stay at the shelter, but their parents or their owners came in and were given spay and neuter certificates. So do you think being able to provide that service internally would alleviate some financial pressure in terms of paying for those spay and neuters off-site?
Well, absolutely. What we hope to be able to do is actually do more. We have had a program going since 2005 where we've actually given out on an annual basis more than 200 spay and neuter certificates to the public for animals that have never even come into our facility. And we do believe that that's an important program, and we'll continue to offer that. This would allow us to just do more, because there is a lot more to be done.
One more question, thank you. Can you tell me what this would mean to your ability in the main shelter building? How would that free up your capacity for other animals inside that building?
Right, and that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. What we would like to be able to do is make sure that every cat within the main building is healthy. We currently have 2 rooms that we now use for isolation, and so obviously those rooms would not be required for that purpose. They are not only not really designed properly for that purpose, but they're not in a good location for that. So those would become adoptable rooms. So we would be able to essentially be able to increase the capacity within the building to have healthy cats available for adoption.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Arneson.
Oh, thank you very much. I had just one question. Actually, on the current screen where it shows these, the floor plan, it's obviously very well thought out. I'm wondering if you can give me an approximation of the square footage?
Yes, thanks for asking, Councillor Arneson. It is 1,200 square feet.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that, and I know from looking at this and listening to your delegation that a lot of time and thought has gone into this, so I appreciate that. I'm just wondering if there had been any consideration to doing this on a modular basis as opposed to an add-on to the actual building, because it seemed to me that there might be some merit in doing that and would provide maybe greater flexibility over time for the use of that space.
Right. Just to clarify, this building actually will be a freestanding building. It will not be an addition to the existing.
It's not attached.
It's very, very close.
Okay.
Although we're on 6.9 acres where we're at, we're limited because of road setbacks and floodplain setbacks to where the building can reasonably be. And we have found, although this slide isn't incredibly clear, we have actually found this is really the only spot that's available for the building. And it's represented as being very close, but is actually separate.
I did go there today and I took a look around and I can see what you're saying about the limitations because of where the other infrastructure is. It just occurred to me, and I'm a layperson, so you'll excuse me if this is not really a good idea, but it seemed in terms of containing contagion that if you had a separation perhaps with like a breezeway or something like that, it might be a viable solution rather than, but I can see what you're saying because it's not attached, so it's in close proximity. So.
It is, and those are great questions. What we're also, of course, going to be focusing on are the actual facilities within to ensure that the air is being treated, so it's there isn't exhaust that's going from one building to the next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, just another question here on, just wondering on the financial side, just so I understand correctly. Did I hear you say that it was the building itself would be approximately $500,000 to build?
That is correct, yes.
And is there an anticipation, I'm expecting, that there would be an increase in operating costs associated with this new building? And, is sort of a plan in place for that, or is there an expectation that at some point you'll be needing help with operating?
Thank you, Councillor Whitmarsh. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to answer that question. Absolutely, it's going to cost more to heat, more to maintain. LAPS is assuming all responsibility for that through future fundraising endeavors. We're also, obviously, we'll make sure that we're building this building to be as efficient as possible so that we can reduce those costs. But yes, it's certainly not our intention to come back to council and ask for future funds to maintain or look after this building.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions. I want to thank you very much for that presentation. It seems that when Langley does something, Langley does it great, and it's the great people. I see a lot of volunteers and people that are associated with LAPS here tonight, and thank you very much for coming out.
Thank you very much for having us.
It's one of those facilities that every municipality has to be involved in, and yet here we've done such a great job that other municipalities are looking to us as a model. And I get emails from I'm getting emails from all over the world, I suppose. And I got one from Minnesota today supporting this project. So there's a lot of pressure on council, I can tell you that. What's interesting is the person from Minnesota has, and he had some great words to say, but he also said he donated. So you're really reaching a lot of people, and I think for Langley, you're doing a great job. I'd like you to pass it on to your staff and your volunteers on behalf of council. This is a separate issue that council will be deliberating at its budget, and certainly be taken into consideration. So thank you very much for that presentation and for coming out today. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah. If anyone in the back is wishing to stay, and there's some seats I've emptied out here, if you want to come forward, I'll just give you a minute to find his chair if you like.